So there's two ways of doing this actually. So I can do a full screen, but then I don't see you anymore. But I like to see if some of you are also, yeah, I like to raise a question or just get in touch with me. Just raise your voice or just put up your hand, and then I like to. Maybe I also do ask a question for you to discuss, and then we can talk about it. I think I like that way of, if that is a possibility as well, to discuss the topics.
You are free to ask anyone any questions. So we will be very looking forward to hear your questions.
Okay, good. Let's see how it goes. So actually my screen is broken, so I only can see the slides and don't see you anymore, but I trust things are fine. So creating starters, why and when. So I will give you a talk about entrepreneurship and so what is really important about entrepreneurship and from various points of view actually. But before we go there, I like to tell a little bit about myself, like what Sadal also mentioned. It's not much about myself, but just my context of work that maybe is of help of just putting me in some kind of box. And so I'm the director of the Delft Center of Entrepreneurship at the Delft University of Technology. I did not put in this, it's at the bottom, TU Delft. Delft University of Technology is the largest university or technology university in the Netherlands. Now the Netherlands is pretty small, so that's not a very difficult job to get. But then again, I think it's a university with 25,000 students. Maybe you've heard about it. It's only focusing on technology. So we only have engineering students. But we always see in our university that we say like these engineering students, they are good at technology. And these technologies are very important for society in future. And what is more important for the students to learn about technology is also knowing where technology can help society, or more translated into what is the value of technology. So we can do something with technology, and there are people in the market, customers, other people in the market, stakeholders, and they all can have a benefit from the technology. And being an engineer is also important to understand. So what is exactly the benefit to society? So this is what we offer in Delft, is that we learn students to reflect on technology in terms of what is the value of this technology for users, for customers, for companies, for society at large. And so this is why we focus on technology-based entrepreneurship. That also has been my interest for many years, actually. And I also included networks to this, because what I like is that as an entrepreneur, we often think you can do all things by yourself. It's very independent and you can make your own decisions. But in a sense, and that's also what I will discuss in this lecture, it's very important that you do this not all by yourself, but with other organizations. And doing this with other organizations has a number of benefits in terms of, so you are good at some parts of what needs to be done in developing the technology and get it into the market, but maybe you do not have all that specific expertise. In particular, when you are an engineer, you might be good at technology, but maybe there's other people that can help do the sales. So that working together with others is very important. This is why networks and with whom is it that you can work makes it very proactive, that you really can get it started and get it out there. I think it's also important, what we will also discuss in this lecture, is that if you do it all by yourself, then it also takes more time to develop the technology, to develop the company, to develop the logistics, the marketing activities, using customers and providing maintenance to them. So that takes a lot of activities that you need to put up as a startup. So if you collaborate with other organizations, maybe they are good at doing sales, maybe they are good at logistics, maybe they are good at service providing and maintenance. So maybe better work with them. You can focus on technology, and that makes it that it also is, you will be more flexible, because you can adapt quicker, you can focus faster on new opportunities. So this is why I think when we talk about technology-based entrepreneurship, and when we are talking more about engineers who focus on technology, on a certain specific knowledge that makes them specific and valuable to clients. Let's see where we can add value and not do any other stuff that may take our effort or distract us to other activities. So what we also do in Delft, and I just put it up in the slide at the right hand, is the 3 levels of education that we try to establish. And I think what you're also doing is similar in terms of think entrepreneurial. It's more about the attitude of the person, and so what makes a person or an organization more entrepreneurial. And that's more about basics of certain knowledge. Acting entrepreneurial. I think it's important for engineers and students in general that they can experiment with technologies and see what is possible, and also learn whether they like it themselves. If you are starting a company, but let's try and experiment, like more in a sandbox, see what is possible, and also learn to collaborate with others. And maybe you will find something that makes more impact and is really a startup company. And then we have also programs that are focusing on start entrepreneurial. So these 3 types of courses is what we offer in Delft across all the faculties. Also, my expertise is more in the first one, think about entrepreneurial, and there's other colleagues of mine that are focusing on really getting started with your company. And I think a lot of practitioner information and knowledge and connecting to industry is very important there. But let's come to the importance of startups. So why are they considered important? So that's maybe an important question to ask. So why is it that startups are seen these days as an important entity of our society? But maybe before we go there, I like to first put up that question. So what is entrepreneurship, and what are startups? I think that makes it more clear to understand why they are important. So let's focus on entrepreneurship as value creation. I think this is really what we need to keep in mind, that the only job for an entrepreneur is to add value, because that's the only reason why customers would purchase a product from you. So if you can explain to customers, now there is the current product or the current way of working, but we can improve that, and we have a new technology, or we have a new product, or we can use it in a different service, and that can improve the work that you need to do. And that is a kind of a change that you try to bring in there, but that change has to create value to your customers. And it's important, what we often mention is really to take it from the user perspective in what is the job this person needs or likes to do. So what he wants or she wants to get done or achieve at the end of the day. And so just for an example, I'm giving this lecture here and I'm using my computer. So this computer has a job for me to do, and that is to connect me with you, and also to show me or show you the presentation that I have, and have that kind of interaction. So the job of my computer is just to do this. Then I'm using Zoom, and you can ask all kinds of questions. Is this the right program to do this? Or do I need other elements in the program that can help me do my job better? Or maybe that you are better at understanding what I'm trying to tell and it's more fun to watch. And maybe I need a different kind of medium to give the lecture. And that might be an improvement over what I currently use and can help me do better the job that I need to do. So I think creating value is really from the perspective of that user. So what is it that they like to do in the end of the day? But it doesn't make any sense to only tell about, so what is the customer, what do they like to get done at the end of the day? But does it also make sense to offer this as a service? And I think, so entrepreneurship is about creating value to your customers, but also there needs to flow a certain return to you as an organization, so that you can keep on doing this. It's not a free of charge. It's not something that we get sponsorship for, and which is why we do it. But there has to be a kind of reason at the customer end to purchase, to pay for the solution, which is enough for me to keep on delivering this as a service over longer periods of time. So it needs to be sustainable, financially sustainable, or economically sustainable. And then there's also others that are involved in who we need to include in how do we create value? And that is about investors and stakeholders. Now, let me first start with the investors. That's obvious because they are also at certain points making an investment in our company, that we are trying to put up some new activities and we need to test it, we need to experiment it. This is why we need funding, but in the end, it will produce income, and the income will also help to pay back the investors. So that needs also to be very clear. So what is the value that we create, not for us to sustain it, but also for our investors, that they get something in return on the risk that they took when investing in this company. But there's also something what we often forget is about stakeholders. So there might be people not in the users, they are not the investors, they are not the owners of the company, but they are affected by what we do in this organization. And those are maybe society groups, or there are other organizations in society, or other people in society that may also be affected by our innovation. So if we innovate and we are putting up an electric car, and then we also need the infrastructure, that might be, in the eyes of certain environmentalists, they will see this as a positive gain. They like that. So there's also, by making or using electric cars, we are maybe better for the ecological and environmental values, and that might be appreciated by them. So that is also a value that we create for other people that are maybe not directly involved. But that might be interesting if we want to help or have their support. But actually, so what is entrepreneurship? I like this definition by Bill Olet from the MIT in the US. And he actually says, like, entrepreneurship is the formation of a new venture that produces a product or a service or an offering, more general, that creates some value for which a new venture can capture some value to make it economically sustainable. So that also has this circle in itself, the circle of creating value, be able to deliver that value, but also to capture value in return. And actually that's coming back to in the previous slide. So there is the customer, there are the investors, and we are offering this. Maybe that is not included in ArTiS, the wider stakeholder environment that also benefit from this innovation. But there are some parts that I underscore here that are important in this. But I think what's most important in this definition is actually the first word, formation. So it's not something that is a one moment activity. It's more like a process of working on technology, see what possibilities do exist, which of those possibilities are opportunities for us to engage into the market, and can we develop it? Can we make the product for the problems that, or the needs that users have in the market at a price that brings us a certain return? And that requires that we need to work on this, that we need to identify, so we can use technology, but we have to adapt the technology to the needs, and that adapting the technology and making the technology will cost money, but it will not exceed, it's not more than what these customers are willing to pay for this, because then we can make it for a price which is lower than we can sell it for. And that gives us a kind of return on what we do. And that formation, that is a longer process. We cannot do that in one moment. And this is another definition that is used by Steve Blank in the US of Stanford. And he says actually, well, that search process, the formation is a search process. And that is also the typical activity of a startup, is doing that search. So it is in search of a viable business opportunity, like I mentioned, develop something, make it for a price that is lower than I sell it with a customer. But I have to make sure that I can do this. And that's the search. How can I make that happen? What is the business model behind that? And that search is a learning process, because we have to iterate. We are not doing this immediately in the best way. So we need to learn to do this over time better and better. And as long as we are improving here, we are trying to find that opportunity which is most interesting, most viable, and then we are still in that search process as a startup. So we are trying to get something established. But maybe that makes it that a startup is not really an organization, it's a temporal organization. So until the very moment that we have found the solution that we want to deliver, and then we go start producing it at larger numbers and optimize our organization, but that means we know what we are going to deliver. So that makes it that our search process is done. And now we have to improve it. We know it is possible. We know we can make money, but it's only about making it more efficient so we can get better returns to our investors and our organization. But as long as it's not at that point of how we can deliver it, it's this temporal organization that is searching for a repeatable business model. And repeatable is that there is a kind of revolving turnover investment, bring up products, sell these products, which is at a better price than it costs us to deliver or to develop it. Sorry, it goes too fast. So, and this is also nice in this picture that there is this search process and there's the execution part. And the search is the startup and the execution is running the company. That makes it that in the search, we are trying to discover what the customers want. And that's an iterative process in which we are listening very carefully to what customers are facing, what their needs are, how we can make it, how it fits in their context of working, how we can improve the job they need to do, how we can keep costs low at the customer end so they are more willing to adopt our innovation, our new technology. And we need to pivot this several times. And maybe we find out this is not going to work and we need to, that's why it's called pivoting. We stay with one foot in technology, but we are looking for a different application. So we don't really change the whole business plan. We only change the direction of where we go with our business. And that's the search for customer validation and finally where the business model can be a success. And once we have done that, then we can build the company and grow the company and create more customer base. So how can we get more customers? How can we do it more efficiently? And how can we organize this in a larger organization? And there's maybe two types of companies that I like to emphasize. And this is also what Bill O'Lett is mentioning. So the two types of entrepreneurs, maybe more two types of companies. That's actually the linear type of company and well, they call it exponential. I hope it's not. But initially it is more exponential. It has this hockey stick curve. And on the left hand, you will see actually that as the revenues grow, you need this relatively same amount. So it's kind of linear growth between how much revenue we gain and how much people are working in our organization. And that goes over time. So there's a kind of linear relationship between more income, but that requires also more people to work with you. Maybe some of you, maybe I like to ask this question. Some of you have an example that you know of. So when is it actually that if we offer a product or a service, then the more clients we have, the more employees we need to work with us? Anyone knows or any idea about what would be a possible example for the left one? Maybe, so many times this is in a service organization. So when we are offering services, then it's difficult to scale. And so for instance, if I'm starting a barbershop and I'm cutting hair for one client and my next client comes in, I can only help that client when I'm finished with the current client. And that makes it, if there is like 5 clients coming in, there is a queue of clients. And if I have an additional employee, then I can cut twice as many people their hairs. And but that has a linear relationship. So more people that come in my barbershop, and the more that I can serve in an hour is dependent on how many people are doing the same work. And now normally this is okay, but it's not the kind of type of innovative entrepreneurship or new entrepreneurship that brings in this scalability. And that is important to mention here, is that it's totally fine as an entrepreneur to do these kind of things, but it's more difficult to scale this activity unless you have a robotized hair cutter. I'm not sure if you find many clients that want to sit underneath a robotized hair cutter. But the other example is, I think maybe some of you know this as an example. So if we have initially, we will make an investment and develop the technology. And over time, when it is developed, then we find clients. And then if we sell it, then we can reproduce it more for more clients without having more employees. So there's maybe one client and there's one employee, then it goes into 5 clients, and then I can do with 2 employees, it goes into 20 clients, and then I can still do with 3 employees, and it goes into 100 clients, and I can still do with 5 employees. So there's a non-linear, so I can scale it, my activity, more faster. And there's other products that can do this for me. And many times these are technology products. For instance, software is a very clear example, that if I can sell software, I can reproduce that at very low cost, and I don't need a lot more employees. So if I deliver that software, unless I'm going to tailor-made it for our clients. But the advantage of this one is, of course, that it's not a service that immediately brings in money. It's service, or it's a product that needs to be developed. We need to test it, but that is often the case with technology. But once we have developed it, then we can scale it more easier, and that can bring in more faster returns on the investment, because then I don't need to spend more money on the organization. I can spend it on, well, growing the company or paying my investors to pay back my investors. So that makes it that this kind of innovation-driven entrepreneurship, IDE, is often considered more interesting in technology when we need to develop it, but it will grow more exponentially afterwards. Any questions that you guys have on this for now? So let's continue then. The importance of startups. Now let's go. So why are they considered important? Now there's 2 types of reasons that I would like to mention here. And this is more from a distance that we look at entrepreneurship. That is economic reasons and social reasons. Now let's focus on the first one, economic reasons. Now the main reason we often see is actually economic value. We bring new innovations to society. There's new things that we do, new activities, new products, new services that we offer. And that is more interesting to users. So if we look 10 years back, this would not have been possible because there were maybe computers, but not something like an interface that can help me talk to you guys. So now there's this innovation. There were entrepreneurs who brought Zoom to the market, they improved it. And that brings also economic value. Now we can provide new services, new activities. We can do new things, more flexible. And that has new activities in itself. So that is important for entrepreneurship. So we see entrepreneurs, they bring up new innovations. Also, it brings in new jobs. But more importantly, and this is how governments, municipalities are looking at this. So let's promote entrepreneurship because they are often more innovative. They are bringing up new activities. And when they are successful, they also have more inclination to grow. And that will bring also more jobs, but many times also higher paid jobs, because we do something which is interesting to clients, which they are willing to pay more for. So we can also pay our employees better, in particular when it's about technology and knowledge that's flowing from universities. But also very important, what we have seen in the past, that it brings also certain resilience. So if we have a region, and we had this in the Netherlands, So there were regions that were very much dependent on a single type of industry. Yeah? So we have, I'm living here in the Netherlands close to Rotterdam. You may know the place for its harbor, and in the past they had a lot of activities that were harbor related, like building ships and stuff like that. But if the region is very dependent on the shipbuilding industry and our labor costs go up and it's more cheaper to buy ships in other countries, that will affect the economic activity. And then there is more of these companies that get bankrupt, they close down, jobs, and people go without work. So what we actually see is that if a region is very much dependent on a single activity or a single industry, we also had it in the East where we had a lot of textile companies, and that also went more expensive, and it could be done in other places that was more efficient. So actually, if there's too many of these textile companies, if there's too many of the marine and shipbuilding companies, all of a sudden this industry is going belly up, or there's more competition from other places. The region will also suffer because you will lose jobs. People are difficult to put into another position. If you can build ships, it's more difficult to join or to go to another company. And if we have more entrepreneurship, that often brings also new innovations that can keep the region more resilient because it produces more innovation, but it also brings more diversity. So there's also different types of firms that offer maintenance, firms that offer different services. And if you promote that type of behavior or of searching for new opportunities, that makes it that regions become also more flexible if things are changing. Well, then the social reasons that we can also consider, and that is more personal. So for you as a person, for me as a person, so what is important actually is that if I am going to start my own company, I'm not working for my boss. And maybe that's not the one important part, but what is important that now I can also have this what we call self-esteem and have the feeling that I can do something new, and I can put my interest to the things that I like to do. And that makes me also more directly involved in the activities that I do, because I can also see the returns of what I do. So if it's a success, I will benefit. If it's not a success, I will also suffer. And that makes it that I will be more directly involved. So that's different from working in a company, because if I work twice as hard, my boss gets paid twice as much. It's not immediately me. So that makes it that in entrepreneurship, that is also more vibrant, more lively, and more immediate, that people are getting incentives to work. So that is the ownership, the responsibility, self-esteem if they are creative. But it will also offer career opportunities. So maybe now I can start this type of company and I learn and do these kind of jobs. But if I see the work and the activity or the industry that I'm involved in is declining, maybe then I can switch to another opportunity or search for another place that I can also put my skills to work. So I can also have this more flexibility, and it will circulate in the job market. That makes it that, yeah, it's also, as a person, it's not that I'm very good at welding, and if there is no need for people that can do the welding of metals, then I'm without my job. If I'm more resilient in the things that I do, that makes me also more that I can take other jobs. So why is entrepreneurship so important today? I think one of the basic parts of entrepreneurship is the change and the reflection that we have. So it's important that we consider things can be done differently. That's also what you do in the jobs and the project. So you have a technology, and I think I can use that technology to improve A, B, or C. It can be done much more efficient, can be done much more faster. It can be done in a very friendly way for users. But you have this kind of critical attitude and you think that it can be done better. So that's important for an entrepreneur, that this is a driver for change, an agent for change. So we think we can do different. And we also not only think it can be done differently, we also put it to action. So we are trying to do it in a different way. That may bring out failure, but that's part of the learning process. So it's not a loss. It's something that we also learned, and next time we can do it even better. So you believe that things can be done better. And that's part of the change agent, not to stay with how things are today. So why is it so important today? There's a lot of challenges that we face these days, and there's a lot of things that we definitely need to change in our society. That has to do with social well-being, that has to do with environmental well-being, it has to do with a lot of energy that we use and how can we reduce this. So there's a lot of questions, more than I can mention here, why we actually need to change things. So if we really want to do it in a different way, we should not do it the same way we did yesterday. So we need to adopt a new approach. And entrepreneurs are, by definition, trying to search for the change. So they actually are not even looking if it can be improved. They just like to do it in a different way. So actually that makes it that we can iterate, we can experiment, we can quickly and fast develop all kinds of solutions. We can keep it small. And we have this, well, willingness to take a risk, might be a bit overstating, but we do accept that it comes with a risk. So there is this change in direction, but we don't know if this is the new direction, if that is the good direction. So that makes it, there is always this big question mark, will it be successful? We might fail, but maybe we also learn then. And there's also this opportunity for existing firms, because they are always a little bit more cautious to change. But maybe with working with entrepreneurs gives them some room to experiment, to see if there's opportunities for us to tap into new technologies, or see if there are markets that could be interesting to us as well. So this is maybe in a number of examples, like in health, we see a lot of, well, at least in our country, but in Japan even more, there's aging populations. So that requires that we need to innovate. So in Japan, they have a lot of robotics that can help elderly people. That's also because the society is changing. It requires new innovations. But it might be also that we see people get more sit at home behind their computer. There's obesity, there's different ways of eating or different habits. And that has pressure on our health system. We need to find new technologies to help this, or to activate people. But that also goes into other, so I'm not going to in depth of each of them, but energy, climate change, nuclear energy, decentralized energy, putting solar panels on your roof, all these kind of activities. Construction, it's a very interesting market that is traditionally quite conservative and has a focus on making things with concrete materials, but now they are getting more into smart buildings. Can we make housing and offices more, at a lower energy cost, so that they are more cost efficient? Can we also build them in a different way with printing houses and robotics to build houses, but maybe also to recycle houses, so we can also use the raw materials to use again. Agriculture, it's very interesting also what we see now. There's in certain places in the world some water depletion or a shortage of water, but there's also cities that are getting larger and larger, and we need to get food to these cities. So can we put up vertical farms that can also directly produce food for the cities that are getting larger? And in finance, there's also a whole lot of new technologies, blockchain technology. So there's a whole lot of challenges actually that we see where technology can make a difference. But many times it's a different type of organization. So construction companies are normally not good at robotics. Agriculture companies are normally not good at vertical farming. So you need new innovators that can come up with these technologies. and implement. So this is why entrepreneurship is important, because we cannot expect existing companies also to test and check with new technologies if it's very different from technologies that they use today. So I often use this one, and I guess you have seen it before. It's the Rogers diffusion model. And actually it says, like, if we are implementing new technologies or new products, then there are innovators, people that are very willing to adopt the new technology. And then over time it will grow as a product, so more people will use it, and there will be a more larger group of users, a majority of users. And at a certain point in time, we still see we can sell products, but it's getting in the decline. So we are selling less and less. And that's where majority are, and maybe at the very late moment, there's also laggards that they just have to change. So there's maybe still some people that are not using smartphones or mobile phones. The majority is using them. And if you want to use certain services, you cannot do without. So that makes it that the larger organization, existing firms, tend to focus on the majority, early majority, late majority, simply because that is a large market that brings in a lot of revenues. If we can produce at low cost, if we can make it very efficient, then we can make a lot of money. And this is also how they are organized and what they are good at. But if you look at new technologies that are, under development, and we don't know if it becomes a success, if it will become a success or not, that is a risk for large companies to invest in. So they probably will stay out of this and focus on what they are good at and not change too much, because that might also bring in certain risk. So let's focus on the very beginning when there's new innovation. So this is where startups are. They bring in new technology, new ways of working, and they know it might not turn out to be a success. So they are willing to accept it as a risk. And but the important part is, of course, is that they are okay. If they fail, they may lose money, but they are small, they are flexible, and they can adapt more easily to new opportunities. This is also why they are collaborating with other organizations. So if I make an investment in a certain technology or certain people that work on technology, then I would like to see that brings in revenues, that brings in something in return. But if I collaborate with someone else who is very good at technology or in marketing, then I did not put my money into it. They have put in their money. We collaborate, and they use my knowledge of technology. We will use their knowledge of marketing. And if it doesn't work in this market, I can dissolve that relationship without taking a loss. So that makes it, as a small organization, working with others makes you also more flexible to benefit if things need to change. And larger organizations tend to control it. They like to focus on efficiency, keeping costs low, and not to collaborate too much, only if they can reduce the cost. But let's see a couple of more items. So it's what large organizations are good at, innovation, but actually innovation is making an invention and doing commercialization. But it also differs from entrepreneurship, because innovation is often getting things done to develop what we know. Whereas with entrepreneurship, it's also about how to organize this, how to make it happen, how to change the business model, how to develop logistics and sales that can help us sell our product. So it comes with much more activities than just the innovation as such. And as what we have seen, it's a very entrepreneurial process. It's very unpredictable. It goes up and down in different directions, but you need to manage that. And it's very nice. Oh, I thought this would. Plans are useless, but planning is essential. So it's also knowing that, looking back at the earlier one, we don't know which direction it will go and how it will proceed. So it's a very unpredictable approach. We don't know if technology will work. We don't know if the market is liking our product. So we may need to switch. We don't know how to organize this in an efficient way. And bringing all this together makes it that we have to experiment a lot and we learn over time. But it is good to make a planning. So what do we need to do actually? How can we organize these activities? But it might not turn out the plan that we initially had. So this is also what Eisenhower says, like that plans are useless because we cannot plan where we will end up with our technology or our product. But we need to conduct a number of steps. We need to analyze our customers. We need to identify which customers having problems that we can help. How can we make our product to fit their needs? And how can we make it in an organization that can build a business model? And that's actually planning the business rather than making a plan of where we want to go with our company. Which market are we going to enter? So in a way, entrepreneurs are not that much different. It's more that they are using a different approach to making decisions. So if they face a problem, they are actually not looking at, so what is the eventual solution that we need to develop? But they are looking, so what can we do today? With whom is it that we work today? What can technology do for our clients? And does that bring any good for our clients? And it's not like articulating the solution and design the solution as we plan, because we cannot plan it. We only can organize the process of how to identify clients, understand their problems or their needs, articulate it into a product that we can make. Can we make it for a price interesting for them? And can we organize it that we can deliver that? And actually that comes with all these kind of effectuation, and I didn't use the word in this, but that is about working together to keep costs low and to keep flexible, be open to change, that we take it for granted that things will change over time. So we need to be adaptable, and that makes it why we need to collaborate, because then we can be more flexible and we can dissolve the relationship with a partner and say, like, you're good at that technology or that market, but this market seems not to be very important to me. And they will also find other people to work with in their market. So we need to be flexible. We don't need to develop it all by ourselves. We also have to look at what we can lose, affordable loss. It's not like if we make this product and we deliver it and there's this size of the market, this is how much we get in return. You can even state more like, how much does it cost us to produce this and how much does it cost us to make it? And then let's try to keep the loss as low as possible by collaborating with other organizations. So it's not about so how much can we gain, but let's minimize what we can lose. So we are looking at what we can afford to lose. And that makes us that we can stay flexible and pivot to new opportunities without asking for new funding or asking for new grants. So it's more like an option approach. So we have, with our technology, we can do A, B, C, or D. Now let's start with B because we think this works best. We collaborate with other organizations to get to B. But if it doesn't work, then what we have afforded to lose is only the relationship with that organization to get to B. But now we still are working with our technology because that one is more flexible. We can also use it in C. Now let's see if we can work in C. And that's actually the affordable loss. So how can we still remain flexible and switch to new opportunities? And you also have to be open for surprises, because we may end up in not A, B, C, or D, but there was another market E, which we did not see or we could not consider that. But now that we have spoken with people in the market C, we understood what actually is needed in another market, and now we can turn to this. So you're open for these surprises. So you're not myopic and only looking, now I'm going to focus on market B and everything else is out of scope. No, you keep your mindset open. You're working with B, and then you learn and you see maybe something you could not have seen before, but you can only see that, you can only understand it when working with B. So what is really needed? And maybe that's totally different. This is also why, and I think it's important to mention in the other courses that we also have about turning technology into business, we use with students working with a patent, a technology, but it might be that by talking to people, we understand what their needs are, but maybe the technology is not needed anymore. We need to adapt the technology. We need to request for a new patent. And this happens every time that we work with an existing patent, and then we are thinking, oh gee, what is the license agreement and how can we work now? And what is mine and what is theirs in this patent? But many times the patent is only just to articulate what are possibilities, but maybe also in a different market. But we could not do that. We could not see that without working initially on one patent. So that makes it, we have to be more flexible and open to new opportunities. So that makes it also that we have to rely on other organizations in our ecosystem, because if we work with other organizations, then we better also use their knowledge, work with them. So many times what is important in such ecosystems is a research institute, people that have certain information, knowledge, but there's also the exchange of people, a talent pool, people that are very good at coding, working with all kinds of technologies, and if we need that, then we can work with them. So it's making it also more flexible to work with. But it's also important to see if there's other elements in an ecosystem that can help things done, like a supportive infrastructure. In particular, if you talk about medical startups in medicine or drug companies, and they are developing a new treatment, maybe, and they need a clean room. Now that's far too expensive to install as a startup, and maybe you should not do it at all. Because if you are not going into the direction of this development of drug as a medical company, but maybe you change in the direction, then you are stuck with your clean room, and it's only like putting pressure on your balance sheet. So you better work with an organization that has a clean room or that has certain technologies for doing research, rather than making the investment yourself. And maybe if you grow larger and you become a large company, then you can have your own clean room and your own technologies and equipment to do certain research, but not as a small company. It doesn't make sense if you're still searching. So that's why supportive infrastructure is very important. And it brings out a kind of rapid recycling of knowledge and equipment that is out there. So you can use equipment from others, work with people from other organizations, and quickly you can navigate through the landscape to see what is possible. I like also this example. I don't like that much to talk about Silicon Valley, but this is one example I like very much. If you have the time to look into, there's a lot of information also on Wikipedia, which is okay for me because this is a very practitioner, but there is this Fairchild semiconductor company. And that was one of the first companies in Silicon Valley when there was hardly anything going on in Silicon Valley. And it's a nice case actually, because they were making transistors and semiconductors. Actually, they were making semiconductors. And yeah, the CEO of that company, he believed actually that we stay with the traditional technology. It was very new at the time, and that was very important to have these semiconductors in electronic devices. But there was also a couple of people that were telling, like, we can do this in a different way. We can also make it much more smaller as a transistor, and then we can build much more and far more cheaper applications with the technology. And there was a lot of hassle and discussion in this organization, and it's typical for a large organization. I focus on what we are good at and don't look too much in new opportunities, because this is what we are good at. We need to optimize that. But eventually these semiconductors were not we're not working anymore. We're not good enough anymore, and they needed to switch to a new technology. And the treacherous 8, they were called. These were 8 people working in the organization, and they say, well, if Sherman, that was the owner of the company, Sherman, if he likes to go this direction, it's okay, but then I'm gone and I'm starting my own company. And of course, there was a lot of debate about who has the knowledge, who owns the knowledge, and who can apply for the patent as such. But actually what you did see is that these 8 people working initially with Fairchild, they started new companies, at the time also called the Fair Children, because they came from Fairchild. And they started new companies. And more interestingly, what they started is all these companies that we know these days still, that is Intel and AMD, advanced memory systems initially, but they are developing new types of organizations, new types of companies, and that is also the recycling, that what we mentioned, using knowledge from others, working with others in developing that ecosystem. So I think a number of things are, so what we try to do in Delft as an example, working on startups, promote education. But it's also interesting to have certain field labs. That's also very important, and it can be high and very sophisticated, but as you know, maybe in the Netherlands, everything is pretty flat and we have a lot of dikes to keep water out of the land, and most of our land is below sea level. So, but we know that this is also an international problem, that some places can suffer from flooding. And that's a very nice experimental site. And they just put up some levees and dikes, and then they have a water basin, and then they on purpose open it. And there's a lot of water coming out. And can we make a surge barrier that can prevent the land from flooding? And what are the types of surge barriers that we can develop? And all kind of researchers, entrepreneurs, they come together, have these small competitions, and they are testing it and see what is the best technology that we can develop. And that also has the kind of attitude from the region that let's experiment, let's put up the conditions for experiments, but also that they can compete, they can work together, they can also have more visibility if they come together. And that can bring up new innovations. They can also inspire each other with new innovations, so we get a kind of competitive element. And so that brings a number of these startups in the end. And that's maybe interesting to see as well. Also important kind of venture capital or an enterprise that invests in these companies and offer much more like funding opportunities and helping the management team to organize and who is it that we need as a sales manager next time. And there is also a lot of incubation activities, much more focusing on how can we connect you to the industry. In Delft, we have the organization that is called Yes Delft, but it has its purpose. Well, let's keep the engineers focused on their technology, but they need to make connections to the industry. So let us, as an incubator, offer services that we are making events where industry and startups are meeting, that they don't have to organize this themselves as a startup, but we build a community, we are making linkages to industry, and we are trying to connect the startups and helping them to make these connections so they can keep focus on their technology. And it all comes back to this, what we discussed earlier. So what are they good at, and can they collaborate? Can they also benefit from services and other parts in the environment that can help them be more successful? Well, at least that they can focus on the things they are good at. And if that is applied in A, but if it doesn't work in application A, they can switch to application B, and then they can still focus on the technology, and we will make sure they have the resources, they have the environment, and we have the connections for them. So actually that brings me to the end of my lecture, 2 minutes.
Perfect timing, Victor.
I hope you guys, oh, I see there were, I couldn't see this because my screen is broken. I only have one screen at the same time.
There is one question, Victor, in chat box.
Yeah.
Could you please refer that one?
Yeah, okay. So recently started media is mostly about innovation related. Could you please explain why you did not touch to innovation? So maybe can I ask Arif to explain what is the question? I'm not sure. So what is
the question was, that was in the, just you read, it was the question. in chat box.
Yeah, I got it, but I don't understand the question fully, I guess. So recently started media is mostly about innovation related. Could you please explain why you did not touch to innovation? So why is it that I don't focus too much on innovation? Maybe I can explain if I'm not sure if I understand the question completely. So it's not about that I don't touch about innovation. I think innovation is a very important element of entrepreneurship. So actually, if you talk about entrepreneurship, it's about proactiveness and innovativeness and a certain willingness, or you accept there will be certain risk. But innovation is very important. I think if there's no innovation, it's not entrepreneurship. It's what I would call more like self-employed. I'm starting a barbershop and I'm cutting hair like my other competitor does do it. I'm not much innovating in it. So maybe I am an entrepreneur in terms of self-employed. I'm making money for my living, but it's not that I'm really doing something new. And I think innovation is a very important element of entrepreneurship, to do something new. However, the difference that I try to make here is that in organizations, as existing organizations, they also try to do something new. But many times it's a small improvement over what we did yesterday. Now, I can give an example in the automotive industry, for instance. So if you see Volkswagen, for instance, they have been producing fossil fuel combustion engines for many years. And what they were specifically focusing on with innovation is to improve the efficiency of the engine so they can drive longer, or they put in some software that they can pass certain tests in pollution. But they were focusing on innovation, doing the same things better and better and better. And that's more like a managerial task to stay within the market, to improve the benefit or the profits in your market so you can stay competitive. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think it's about doing it in a different way. And then you are actually questioning, so is the combustion engine the right way of propulsion, or do we need other types of propulsion? Maybe we need electric cars, maybe we need hydrogen cars. And that makes it that there is more risk involved, also innovation, but also a different way of thinking about, so what is actually what we offer today as a product. And people don't buy the car because there's a combustion engine in it. No, they don't buy a car to travel from A to B. And there are certain expectations they have, and that takes it in a different way. And I don't think innovation is neglected, but it's not the only reason for entrepreneurship. So there needs to be a little bit more, also take it from a different point of view.
Yes. Victor, thank you. And also we got a message. It's clear now for our ArTiS. Thank you. And just one question from my side. You just mentioned your incubation center. What kind of services that you're providing to startups? And do you recommend for researchers and students to set up their first startup in incubation center instead of somewhere outside? Okay. What would be the benefit?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of definitions about, so what actually is an incubation center? Now let's put it more in general terms, that they offer services. Services, I think what is important, and so if you start your company and you have an engineering focus, so you're good at technology, so let's see what these incubation centers do offer to me. And many times what I think is important, that they help you to get to connect with industry, understand maybe what is needed in the industry, how do I negotiate with people in industry, how do I get to certain customers within the industry, how do I tell the story, what is my narrative actually. So technology engineers or technology-based entrepreneurs tend to focus more on the technology rather than what it does do for their clients. Last week we had a team of students. They were building a hydrogen drone to offer services for wind turbines in sea, and then you can make inspection of them. And the only story that I was told by this group of students was the design of the drone and why hydrogen is a good way of propulsion. But they didn't tell me from the user perspective why my services would be better off if I use a drone rather than with a ship going and sail to these wind turbines. So it didn't include the user perspective. So I think for an incubation center, it's really important to take, well, two things actually is one, keep the startup focused on their technology. So they are good at technology. Let them also work on the technology, but also help them make that transition of the technology or the translation of the technology to industry. So they are helped and supported and coached in making connections to industry, but also about how to talk the language of the industry and not talk the language of the technology. And that's a kind of balancing act that an incubator needs to offer. So I think many incubators, they also offer, like, they take an equity stake. I would be very cautious. They offer accommodation. There's not much value in taking accommodation other than there's other startups that also inspire you. But it's much more the connections that they can help you make to industry that I think is important.
Okay, Victor, thank you. Is there any questions from participants? Okay, so there is no question in chat box neither. Okay, Victor, thank you very much for your time and being with us.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
It was nice to hear the entrepreneurship story from your side. Thank you.
Okay, good, good.
And see you in next events.
I will see you later at
yes, definitely. Thanks, Victor.
Being with you.
Thanks. Bye bye.
All of you. See you later. Bye bye.
Bye bye.